Welcome, everybody, to the Mind Sculptors podcast, your official source for all cowfolk-related content.
No, we were free. We were free. Can't believe you just did that to me. We started the podcast in just the most cursed way.
Listen, if I'm going to be the champion of calling vehicles Buicks, I'm also going to be the champion of getting wizards to make cowfolk. Doesn't have to be many cowfolk. They can just make one, and it's fine. But I just want,
even if it has to be like an unset.
I would take it.
You know,
I would take the dub. You know what? Another dub I would take. Speaking of Buicks, is if they made an vehicle that was made some reference to a Buick, or just was a Buick.
Just the card is like just a Buick, and it's just like the one
vanilla just
like,
says
it doesn't
crew.
actually like do anything. Yeah.
Would be amazing. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Callahan. Forgot my name. That thing you do often.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a new one. Yeah. And I am Smorgasbord. I've forgotten my name as well.
Sounds like a name that like Rick and Morty cast would like. Yeah.
Smorgasbord. Yeah. I genuinely feel like it's 90% of that show is like the random neuron firings, and they're just like, yeah, we should write this down.
A lot of that show was Justin Roiland riffing. And now it's not Justin Roiland.
Probably under the Amen.
Which good on you, Adult Swim. Man, this set though. Today we're talking about.
That's the energy we're.
Yeah, that's the energy we're talking about. I mean, I don't want to like fuck around a whole lot because we have fucking 33 cards on our review list.
Yeah,
and they're like, this is every now and again. I feel like every 2 years we get a cEDH, like a set that just. The whole thing is just like, here's a bunch of cEDH cards. And we are on that year, I guess. So here's your set.
Yeah, this one feels like this is like not necessarily the like, here's a bunch of staples set, but like, here's a bunch of cards that like the tier 2 decks of the format will all get a little boost.
It's not
like
quite
Paladinish. Yeah. Oh, dear God.
But it is very much a like, oh, hey, there's some new archetypes that are going to come out of this. Hey, there's a new partner. Hey, there's like new things like that I think are really cool. And are welcome additions to the format. And I love seeing it. So I think I just want to get right into it. Speaking of the new partner, let's just go ahead and talk about it. It's Francisco Fowl Marauder. It is a legendary creature, bird pirate, that costs a generic and a black, is a 0/1. It has flying. It can't block. And whenever one or more pirates you control deal combat damage to a player, Francisco explores. And of course, like I said at the top, it does have partners. So we have, just like last year, we got the one rogue partner in the commander set with Yoshimaru. Now we have Francisco. And I love this. And there's a lot of cool things to talk about with Francisco. So what are your feelings on this card?
So to me, honestly, this card is significantly nerfed by the fact that it does not have a single power. If this was a 1/1, I would like this card a lot. But I'm already seeing, I know Zane, who is the Rogsai famous, has already started working on a Francisco prom list. And I think the idea is literally just to have like this 2-drop commander that comes down and like turns on your guardianships and your spots and like all of that stuff. And I think there's literally like 2 pirates in the deck, I'm pretty sure. But it is like a pretty decent Grixis pairing if you want that like, I'm not going all the way into my combinations where like it's not all the way
it like
down to
makes
Rogsai,
up
right? Where
for
it's
the
like the 0
shortcomings
drop.
of what Rogsai has, right? Like where instead of going full speed,
Yeah.
you're kind of just yeah,
It's
you're like halfway there,
yeah.
and then you're like, all right, I
Mhm.
have my other commander actually does something relevant and is a card draw engine to get me back into games.
Right. It's like it's not as explosive as Rogsai, but also you
Right.
have Crom. So like that's kind of nice, and it's definitely a better like midway option than like Vile
Oh,
Smasher or
100%.
Kavesh or something like that, right? I think it's going to be just like a role player. I don't think it's going to be
Yeah.
sexy at all. Like I think it's just going to like do exactly what it needs to do. There's going to be more pirate heavy versions of the deck, I feel like, but they're not like, they'll also just be
Yeah.
role players, I think.
I really like when we get partners like this because I like seeing more role players pop up. And like for me, like playing Francisco Crom is a lot more appealing than playing Rograk because having a partner that I can yeah, like and like even playing a more pirate heavy version of it where you're just playing like a handful of the like one drop like pirates or even shapeshifters just to get a little extra value out of it so you can feed your culling the ritual and also feed your commander for a little bit of synergy. Like that to me is much more appealing and I'm more okay with somebody in our comments from last week's video made a really I thought this was a really good point was Grix like Rogsai doesn't have bad cards, it has mid cards. And I was like, yes, I can totally get behind that.
Yes.
And I feel like Francisco Crom, like having Crom in my command zone makes me feel a lot more
Makes you feel a
comfortable
lot better,
playing mid cards.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's like a pretty soft
Yeah.
take, right? Like that's like it's I mean like Mox Amber coming down on your 2 drops is always good. Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting Swat, and Deadly Rollick being available as early as turn 1 is like we've been seeing how it is with Rograk, and imagine having some card draw on it. Like it's obviously not Rograk, right? Like it will not increase the amount of opening hands that are like absolutely busto, right? But you can still play that turn 1 Springleaf Drum and have that convert turn 2 right away, right? Like whatever stupid bad thing you need a body to do at all times, Francisco will do that.
And it feels like you're giving up that a little bit of your front end speed for a little bit more maneuverability. And like if I were making a car comparison, like it really feels like you're like switching from a dragster to a car that like has like maybe like 4-wheel drive versus 2-wheel drive, right?
Sure, yeah.
So
yeah. That's exactly It like allows you to have a little more of that like pivot game plan, right? Like you're not doing the early game thing necessarily as well, but you're also definitely not you're gaining a late game that is not just I hope I have a Ristic Study.
And I hope nobody respects the Ristic Study, right? Like you have
exactly.
So Francisco, I'm really into it. I'm very excited. Wizards, please keep printing partners like this. I love getting more partners. My hot take has always been that once you made the mistake of making partners, the only way to fix partners isn't to ban them, it's to just print them into the ground. And you got to flood the market. And I love seeing more partners. So good job there. Next card on our list is Inti, Seneschal of the Sun. It's a legendary human knight that costs a generic and a red and is a 2/2. It says whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. Second ability is whenever you discard one or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next turn. So this is pretty good.
Yeah. Remember how we were talking about how good 2-drops are and how having them down pretty early is pretty sick? Like what Inti lacks in colors, Inti gains in efficiency, right? If you have a card like Containment Construct and combine that with Inti, it's like obviously really solid, right? Because the card you're discarding, you are just getting back, right? Inti also allows you to just do like so. I mean, first of all, the fact that it also enables itself on its front face is really nice, right? Because a lot of cards like this will lack that extra little bit of oomph to them, right? Anytime you Faithless Looting, you will be now drawing more cards, right? Anytime you are doing things with like wheels, stuff like that, a card we'll talk about later in this episode, you will be discarding and getting some value off of that, right? So the important part about this card, I think worth mentioning, is that it says one or more, right? So you want to discard in chunks of one a lot of the time, and that is going to be important for like going through and using this card the most effectively. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Iruth in a sense, right? It's like a very early, cheap, efficient version of Iruth, right? There's definitely some downsides with Iruth that this makes up for, and then some obviously lack of blue upsides that it lacks as well, right? So I think this could easily be like a deck that ends with a Breach Outlet. It's just like it's such a efficient rate for a commander, and also discard on a stick allows to open up like a lot of really nice scenarios with cards like Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer and like anything like that that like cares about things in the graveyard, Duretti, stuff like that. So there's a lot of like really nice artifact style synergies you can have in there, and like having this in the command zone and then having the redundancy of all of those enablers to like pull things out of the yard, like we just talked about, really can open up a lot of interesting play.
Yeah, it's for me a mono red deck like this. Personally, I'm not like super into, but I mean, like, it seems like if you're going to do that, it's a fine enough card. And it also seems like a card that can fit in like reasonably well into the 99 of like a lot of different stuff.
That's the other thing too, is like if your commander cares about discarding, saying blue, red, Grixis, like all of those things, like this starts to get very attractive. Like I could see this easily being a card you play with like Armix or something like that, right?
Yeah, this is a cool card. Also, the art is just cool as hell. You eating oatmeal?
Oh. Wait, this card is actually... Huh.
Yes.
I didn't realize how good this was with Sisay.
Oh.
Because they attack, you put a 1/1 counter on them for Agatha's Cauldron synergies. You increase Sisay's power, on top of the fact that it itself is increasing Sisay's power.
You could...
Yo, this is stupid in
if you put this in Sisay, you can have like a Fabro Elder in hand, discard it, put the +1/+1 on there. If you have Cauldron out, Sisay now has the Cauldron ability.
Yep. Yeah, no, this is like actually kind of real in Sisay. Huh.
To be fair,
that's they call that a live podcast discovery.
To be fair, to quote Cam from last week, the what's it called? The Sisay lines don't make sense to anybody who doesn't play Sisay. Next card on our list is Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel. It is a 2/1 Siren Pirate that costs a colorless and a blue. It has flash, flying, and whenever Malcolm deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it. Draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 4 more chorus counters on Malcolm, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost. So it was very funny because when this card was announced and people were talking about it, they're like, you're never going to get the 4th ability. You're never going to get to recast it. And it's like, yeah, it's card draw with upside, right? Like imagine like this is the thing that I think drives me nuts about it, is because it's kind of like if you looked at Ledger Shredder and said, it's like Ledger Shredder with some upside, right? So like that's kind of how I evaluate this card. The big difference being obviously it doesn't get the +1/+1 counters. It just gets a chorus counter, which is like fine. And then like gives you a way so that you can potentially make up for that discard by casting it. And it doesn't exile it from your graveyard either. You just cast it. So it's like not like your Rite of Past in Flaming a card.
Yeah. I mean, so like this reminds me a lot of the conversations that happened when like Mike and 11 came out, right? The Stranger Things duo, when they were like, "Oh, well, you're never going to get 11 cards with 11." It's like it's 3-color card draw stapled onto one of your 2 partners, right? Like this is exactly that same conversation of like, yeah, you probably won't get to the payoff. If you do, sick, right? I mean, like you're probably casting like a free.
It's like if you evaluated Tevesh by only looking at its ultimate, right? And you were like, oh, well, you're never going to get there. And it's like, okay, sure. Nope. But the rest of the card is still good. Like,
yeah. So, exactly. No, I think this card's awesome. I'm moving towards a place in my cEDH career, given the current metagame, where I think just the keyword flash is goated, just like of all time. I would hate this card a lot more if it had did not have flash. But the idea that you can do the Fairy Mastermind, Orcish Bowmasters thing and just be like, all right, I could hold up a counterspell. I could hold up Malcolm. Who knows? What could I possibly have right now? And your opponents are like, I don't know. I think it's sick. And also like evasive looter.
Very good in Timna Malcolm.
Right? We have Timna in the format. Right. Like it's crazy. It's also like, not to mention the pirate synergies, right? The like Malcolm is good in Malcolm, which I think is the funniest part about this whole thing. Yeah. But it's like genuinely just got so many things going for it. Not like even before we get to the part where like it being a pirate is actually a relevant line of text.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very into this card. And I think it's probably one of the 2 drops that I like when I look at, because we're now at this point where we have like a lot of not quite Bobs, if that makes sense, that are like these 2-drop Bob-esque cards where it's like you're playing Dark Confidant, but like all these different ways of playing Dark Confidant. And so I really like this card and think it should see play. I am a little concerned about the Bowmasters stuff with it being a 2/1. But yeah, I mean, anytime I see a 2/1 or a X, really just an X1, my heart just kind of goes, but you know, it just is what it is. Right. So next card on our list is the Ancient One. It is an 8/8 spirit god creature that costs a blue and a black. And it has 2.
An 8/8 for 2. What?
It has Descend 8. The Ancient One can't attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. And then the second ability costs 2 generic and a blue-black to activate. And it says, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a card this way, target player mills cards equal to its mana value. So we were talking about this a little bit, and hey guys, check it out. It's another set. It's another blue-black Scepter outlet. Holy crap.
Woo. Yeah. I mean, that's really, it is what it is. Right. It's a really interesting one, I think. Right. I do like the idea that like, as the game progresses, it does become a real clock. Right. And there is like some like weird world where you like turn it into a manual mill thing, but I don't think that happens a lot. 90% of the time you're playing Thoracle, you're playing Console, you're playing Ice Crown Scepter, and you attempt to make
and you draw cards. And it's another blue-black Scepter outlet, because we were at we did not have any of those before. This is the first one.
I know.
We really don't have any other options, but this is a good one to add to that, like, you know, what's the word for it? That like pantheon of cards, since it's a god, you know what I mean? But yeah, the Ancient One, it's cool. I like this more than Toxrill. Fucking hate that deck. Toxrill is, you know what? I'm gonna do this. Hey, if you play Toxrill, grow up.
Yep. Jesus Christ, go.
Listen, I said it last week to Rogues High players. Grow up and play Tim Necrom. You know, if you're gonna play Toxrill, just grow up and play Tivit. That's what I have for you.
Also worth mentioning that Ancient One is 2 mana, right? So like it coming down, turning on Mox Amber, Fierce Guardianship, Deadly Rollick.
Yeah, like there are a lot of good advantages to playing this as your commander. And it's like a lot better than like Lazov, which is the like other 2 mana.
I mean, Vohar is the other one.
Yeah, Vohar also does that too. Yeah, that's fair. Next card on our list is really exciting. It's Kutzil, Malamet Exemplar. It is a 3/3 legendary cat warrior that costs a generic, a green, and a white. And it says, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. And when one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's like a lot of things. So hey, look, we got another Grand Abolisher effect, boys and girls.
Yeah. But don't worry, Cal, it has upside.
Yeah, that was exactly what I wanted from Grand Abolisher. Was it needed upside. You know what? And you know what? It also needed to be a warrior. And so, with that being said,
wait. No. Don't do it, Cal.
It's time for your favorite game show. Is this a Najeela card? This week's contestant, hailing from the state of Massachusetts, it is your boy
Not anymore.
Ian. I guess you're from Pennsylvania. Originally from Beantown, it's our good friend Ian. Ian, Kutzil Malamet Exemplar is a new warrior that is also a Grand Abolisher. So I ask you, is this a Najeela card?
I think for like the second time ever on this show, actually, yes. I think Samet was the first one, and this is also the second one for sure. I mean, like it's a Grand Abolisher on a warrior. It's so good. Are you kidding me?
Hey, what if your Grand Abolisher added to your Najeela account?
Yeah. Like I was like, has Memo posted about this card? Yeah, he has. Great. Yeah. Cool. It's a Najeela card.
Oh, like, does it also just have some passive upside of like potentially drawing you cards? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe Pongo and Memo both probably fainted when they read this card.
Yeah. Also, very much a Sisay card. A Grand Abolisher that adds 2 to Sisay is like,
I mean, honestly, good. It feels like it is a card that goes in pretty much every green-white deck.
I don't know, but yes.
Well, okay. My argument is, if you are, let me put one small asterisk next to that. It is a card that every green-white deck that already wanted to play Grand Abolisher should just also play.
I can get behind
that. That's not as catchy as saying every green-white deck should play. So thank you for making my really catchy poppy, good to it's easy to sell, that I had an airport book there and you were like, no, man.
Yeah.
Context, nuance.
Yeah. Here, let's play a little game show I like to call Ian is pedantic.
This week's contestant. This is a super, super exciting get in the format. And yeah, I mean, also, can we just take a moment to address the fact that it's a fucking uncommon? Like that, that's how good cards are getting now.
I've opened multiple copies of this card for sure.
Next card on our list is Tetzin, Gnome Champion. It is a 2/2 legendary artifact creature gnome that costs blue, red, and white. And it says, Whenever Tetzin or another double-faced artifact enters the battlefield under your control, mill 3 cards. If you put an artifact card from among them into your hand, or if you may put an artifact card from among them into your hand. And it also has the activated ability, craft with 6 artifacts 4. So what that means is you pay 4 generic mana, exile this artifact, and then you exile the 6 from among other permanents you control and or cards from your graveyard, and return this card transformed under its owner's control. Which is super wordy, but effectively the easiest way of understanding this is that you exile this and 6 other permanents, either from your graveyard or, your that you control, and you pay 4 mana and you flip the card. That is the gist.
Yeah.
The backside of it is the Golden Gear Colossus. It is a 6/6 gnome that is also a legendary artifact creature. It has vigilance and trample. And it says, whenever the Golden Gear Colossus enters the battlefield or attacks, transform up to 1 other target double-faced artifact you control. Create 2 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens. Oh my goodness, they keep figuring out ways to put as much text as humanly possible
this
on
is
Magic
the Yu-Gi-Oh
cards.
card for sure. So let's do the breakdown of why this card is in our frame of reference. So 1, Dockside Outlet, right? So you have Baron, the excavation card, you have Cloudstone Curio, you have Lord Drakus, right? All of those ways to Dockside combo this card. Because you can basically put all your artifacts in your hand, and then depending on what sort of flavor of the month is your Dockside Outlet, you can get a Walking Ballista, you can get a Aetherflux Reservoir, I don't know.
Whatever tickles your fancy.
Whatever tickles your and the other side of it is it's Jeskai. You can play Breach, you can do all that stuff. It's relatively cheap, right? And the important part is that it itself is filling the graveyard, right? And craft can take things out of the graveyard. So you don't need stuff on the battlefield, right? So you can have I don't know, you say you played a Mox Amber or a Mox Opal or a Chrome Mox to get this guy out, right? That's, it itself is, 1 artifact. Doesn't count towards the 6, right? But you can get that on pretty easily, and say you've done a lot of self-milling because you're already a Breach deck and you're playing Malcolm and you're playing Ledger Shredder and you've done all the self-milling, and there's a bunch of artifacts in your graveyard. Very easy to actually flip this thing if you build the
personally makes me the way you're describing it, think of modern Jeskai Breach as the prototypical way of what you would do with this.
Absolutely. Grinding Station loops, Emery, all that garbage. And then the other part of it is I have a Scryfall search right now of all the double-sided Jeskai cards, right? And some of them are big dookie, and other ones are not that bad. Obviously,
it doesn't need to be a double-faced artifact.
Yes, right. So that the double-faced artifacts, I have a bunch of those. Some of them are Transformers cards that are kind of mid. There's definitely a lot of crafting stuff from this set specifically,
guys.
That
it's come back. Oh no, the red Transformer that everybody it's a Slicer deck.
Transformers, Slicer in the 99. But there's some artifacts with really interesting upsides. Azor's Gateway is already a looter on a thing that's kind of worth playing, right? And then on the backside, it's a land that taps for mana equal to your life total. Little fun things like that. So not all of them are great. Not all of them are even good, but some of them are okay, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, I like that there is a what's it called? A commander that actively helps push you towards doing the breach, like Jeskai breach, which I think is really cool. So like that is one of the things that I really like about it.
Like as I said, it's not broken, right? It's not like the next insane deck in cEDH, but like you get your guardianships, you get your deflecting swats, you get a decent amount of breach filling, you have an infinite mana outlet in a sense in the command zone, right? Or at least an infinite ETB outlet, right? So like there are many ways in which this could be a lot worse, right? Also, any flicker effects with this card like are kind of interesting because it just gets you a lot of artifact value, right?
The next card on our list. Hold on, I'm trying to make sure I say it right. Ojer Axonil is how you say it. Ojer Axonil, Deepest Might, is a 4/4 legendary god that costs 2 generic and 2 red. It has trample, and it says, if a red source you control would deal an amount of non-combat damage less than Ojer Axonil is power to an opponent, that source deals damage equal to Ojer Axonil's power instead. When Ojer Axonil dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. In the backside of it is a land, and it's Temple of Power. It can tap for 1 red and also has an activated ability that costs 2 generic and a red, and you tap it, and it says Transform Temple of Power. Activate only if a red source you controlled dealt 4 or more non-combat damage this turn, and only as a sorcery. So this is a very cool card. I apologize for taking a moment there, but I did. This is one of those like sets that I do want to make sure that I'm like pronouncing things correctly. So yeah, this is a very cool card. This was one you talked about like a few weeks ago. So what are your thoughts on Ojer Axonil?
Burn in cEDH, let's go, baby. So I've made a prototype deck already for this list. Pull that up.
Axonil, excuse me.
Axonil. Okay. Pulling up what we're talking about it. Just so the idea is like you play a few stacks pieces, but mostly your stacks is burn, and burn is your stacks, and death is inevitable. But like this is the conversion rate on this card of like what would normally become like coming out of a card to what it is now is like sick, right? So not to only mention there are ways to like really like get somebody with this card. So there's cards like Downhill Charge, which are like gives a creature plus X plus O, where X is the amount of mountains you control, and you can like sack a mountain to cast it for free, right? So like, you know, so for example, say your opponent's like, okay, I'm going to crack 3 treasures with Dockside, right? And you have your commander out, and you have a Sardian Avenger, which normally would do 1 damage to your opponent, right? You can be like, all right, cool. I have 4 mountains here. I'm going to sack 1, make Ojer's power 7, right? For free. And then the Sardian Avenger trigger is going to happen. And okay, so now you've cracked 3 treasures, you take 21 damage. Like stuff like that. And it like also without the like cute stuff of like Downhill Charge that I just talked about, that is still 12 damage from cracking 3 treasures with Dockside. If you talk about cards like Mana Barbs or Burning Earth, right? Like every time you tap a land, you take 1 damage. With your commander out, every time you tap a land, you take 4 damage.
Right.
That limits the amount of things your opponents can do by a significant amount. You have cards like Pyrostatic Pillar. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, mana value 3 or less, deals 2 damage to them. Boom, 4 damage. Starts to get out of hand very quickly, right? You have cards like Rampaging Ferocidon. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. Boom, dealing 4. You have cards like Spear's Fury, does 1 damage to every player. You know, you can hear how all of these things start to
Eidolon of the Great Revel.
Yeah, Eidolon of the Great Revel, classic option. Even a card like Flame Jab is just like 1 red, deal 4 damage with Retrace, right? Like that does start to just be like, okay, cool. I'm flooding a little bit. Like I'm just gonna deal you 12, right? Like that is absolutely an option for sure. So yeah, this deck definitely has a lot of upside.
So pack your Monastery Swift Spheres, pack your Goblin Guides.
No. Those don't do anything with this commander. But the other stuff, like the actual stacks, the actual things that like ping your opponents and deal non-combat damage, those are the real deal, and they will actually like really add up with the deck. Not only mentioning that, but like you get to play Grafdigger's Cage and Blood Moon stuff. So like you get to stop your opponents doing the really broken stuff, and then just like absolutely dead them, like for sure.
It's super, super cool. I really am excited to see where this goes. I know you're going to be building it. And yeah, mono red burn, baby.
Yeah, I hope
when
it works.
In doubt, burn them out.
Yeah, I've wanted a burn strategy to work
but...
in this format for quite some time, and I feel like this is this and like Solfim printed in the Phyrexia set are like the two cards that like get us closest to that, and I'm very much hoping that this will be able to get there for sure.
Yeah. Well, last of the legendary creatures we have on our list is Ghalta, Stampede Tyrant. It is a 12/12 Elder Dinosaur that costs 5 generic and 3 green. And it has trample and says, whenever Ghalta Stampede Tyrant enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. Hey, we got a combo card. Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. This is
okay.
So this card, we were talking about this a little bit pre-show, is a card that is making me want to reevaluate and go back to like Thrastimna Retrofit. Specifically playing this in the slot of Omniscience, because of the fact that what this gives you is that ability to, it fills the same void that Omniscience did, where you would go get Omniscience so that you could cast your Hulk if you needed to, if it was like, stranded in your hand.
Yeah.
But also it just like lets you, I have Hulk and Viscera Seer in my hand. That's neat. I'm just going to put that down. And like this to me, I think puts a lot of life into Hulk archetypes.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it in like specifically Hulk, but as you mentioned, we were talking about pre-show, and I'm a really big fan of like trying to make sneak attack a thing in cEDH, and hopefully they're like reprint legend that like helps with that game plan a little bit. They have yet to do so,
Right.
But I think this card is one of many reasons to like start looking into that strategy a little bit more. Just being able to be like, all right, one red, put everything else in my hand out of the field is pretty sick. This also doesn't have the if you would cast it restriction that they've been putting on a lot of cards, like we were talking about pre-show, and reanimating this is real, like flickering it in, natural ordering it, whatever, like things bring it into the field easily.
It's very funny because like this, I was saying this the other day, but this set very much feels like Fire Design to me. Like when I look at how like top to bottom, how powerful it is, like it is very like absolutely the strongest that we've had since they stopped doing Fire Design. And this is probably in my mind like the prototypical card for that, because it's just like on its face, here is a broken card.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, people want big dinosaurs, right? Like they're gonna make big dinosaurs do good things. I think is kind of the idea, right? I like, and I think that once again, there's a lot of role players in this. I don't think anything's like inherently like
I agree.
Right? Which I appreciate that they can do Fire Design without making it obnoxious.
Yeah. It feels like this is something we've said for several sets in a row, but it really feels like like the card design team is like on a fucking roll right now, because it feels like it's just been like banger after banger after banger. And like every set has just been like, hey, this is a really well designed set and doesn't go crazy and adds a lot of good depth and nuance to the format. And I love seeing it.
Yeah, same.
Next card on our list, we're moving out over to the non-legendary creatures. And First card on our list, we're not quite there yet, but Charismatic Conqueror.
Wait, what?
It is a 2/2 vampire soldier.
Man, you're Moxfield has it listed in the different directions, so the artifacts were next.
I know it has artifacts next, but I know the order is creatures before everything else. So the next card on our list is Charismatic Conqueror, which is a 2/2 vampire soldier that costs a generic and a white. It has vigilance and says, whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. This card on its face seems like I feel like a lot of people are going to look at it and be like, but actually it's quite good.
This card is quite good. Yeah. So here's the thing. I've talked a lot about this card with people, like a lot. And the idea is, and this is the big thing with this card, is like, if you can convert 1/1 bodies to winning the game with an exceptional rate, I think the worst example of this is like Tymna, right? Like a bunch of 1/1s will allow you to swing in, draw cards off Tymna, like gain back some of the life you lose from advantage engine, that kind of stuff, right? That is my worst case scenario for this card, right?
I mean, the tokens also have lifelink too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Gain life back. Yeah. So, and then the best case scenario with this is a deck like Winota, where this is just a blind obedience, because they will never let you have the 1/1s. And if they do let you have the 1/1s, they're going to try and win. And if they get stopped, they've just conceded the game to you, right? So, like either way, this card is very good.
That's kind of one of the things I like about this is it's like in the Winotas and in the Tymnas, this is a blind obedience, right? It's a blind obedience that has like a permission thing stapled onto it.
Yeah.
And I like that this set has kind of given us a critical mass of blind obedience like effects.
Yeah. And giving your opponents the choice is never the best option, right? Like it would be amazing if you could choose this, right? And given your opponents having the choice, they will always make the best option for them, and that will most likely have the potential of leading towards them winning the game, right? But that being said, like you stick this early in certain decks, once again, that really care about bodies and like actually care about combat. So Jetmir, Winota, Tymna, like all of those decks are going to slam this card into it. I don't know about Tymna. Like some Tymna strategies will, though, I think. And in the decks where your opponents,
I think like a Tymna Malcolm or a Thras Tymna, like those types of decks.
Yes, yeah. So in those style strategies, I can definitely see Conqueror becoming very relevant.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I'm very into it. Speaking of more of a what was a critical mass of blind obedience effects. Our next card is Dauntless Dismantler. It is a 1/4 human artificer that costs a generic and a white, and says artifacts your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. And it also says has an activated ability that costs XX and a white, and you sacrifice Dauntless Dismantler, destroy each artifact with mana value X. So it's like blind obedience meets what's the ape that has that ability?
Gorilla Shaman.
Yeah, Gorilla Shaman.
But it's like it's like better than Gorilla Shaman. It's like Meltdown.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, this card's insane. Like this, like actually insane.
This is like what's it called? Draneth Magistrate level good.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like actually, like so the 1/4 body very big. And like one of the biggest downsides with the card, like blind obedience, is like sometimes you end up in these scenarios where your opponents like jam a bunch of their dock size and stuff, and then it goes back to your turn, and you're like, oh, I still don't have a way to answer these treasures, and maybe my opponents are playing greedy, like whatever the case is, right? And with this card, you have the option of being like, okay, well, I'm just going to hold up one white, and if you go to their upkeep and it looks like they're about to, or the end step before their turn, it looks like they're going to untap with 6 treasures, even though they all came in tapped, you can still just be like, all right, great, one white, destroy all the 0 mana rocks in this field, like completely, right? Which is huge.
Yep.
This card is very, very powerful. And also like that, like your opponents can like point a piece of target removal at it to like make treasures and stuff come in tap, and you're like, sure, untapped. I mean, and you can be like, okay, yeah, like great. If you're gonna try and go for a dockside win here, I'm just gonna nuke all the artifacts on the battlefield and that are gonna
fun,
add to your
friend.
dockside count. Yeah, exactly. Like good luck with that. So yeah, this card is sick. 1/4 body once again for 2 mana. Is like it's a human also, which is like
I mean it's the same thing with like the reason I compare it to Drannith is the body, because the thing that like Charismatic Conqueror doesn't have that this has is Charismatic Conqueror is a 2/2. And like this being a 1/4, and like this is one of the things that I just wish I could explain to people is having, and I think people generally get it, but like being a 1/4 means that it just gets through everything. It beats a braid. It beats most removal spells that deal damage.
Timna,
yeah, so it's like it blocks a Timna, it blocks the Gila comfortably, which Drannith can't even say. So it's like this is really good. Very big fan of this. This is a staple. Play this in all your decks. Like just listen, Blight Obedience was already a card that we were saying should be in every white deck you're playing. This is above that. So noted. Next card on our list are do you want to do it
no, it's okay. I have really lost momentum for it.
Okay. Next card on our list is one of the Jurassic Park cards. It is Hunting Velociraptor. It is a 3/2 dinosaur that costs 2 generic and a red. And it has first strike and says dinosaur spells you cast have Prowl, 2 generic and a red. And what that is you may cast a spell for its Prowl cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with a creature with any of its creature types.
Okay. Very easy to like digest here. This card goes in 7 mana Atali. You swing in with this, and 7 mana Atali costs 3 mana, and that's very, very good. You can get this down very easily on turn 1. It's very good for that deck. That's really all it is. Here for, I guess, like if you ever are playing Gishath cEDH or Zakama cEDH, sure, that works too. Wait a minute, that's actually pretty cool. Wait a minute. Zakama with this card is also pretty cool. I just thought about that.
It's like a second food chain almost.
Yeah. Okay. That part's kind of sick.
Hey, remember that part earlier when you were seeing realizations in real time on this podcast?
Yeah.
Here's more.
I do really like that this set is just like dinosaur. Yay. Like
yeah. I really, really love this set so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. Zakama and Itali.
Sick.
Next card on the list is Kitesail Larcenist. It's a 2/3, a human pirate that costs 2 generic and a white, or in a blue. No, not sure why I said white. It has flying and ward 1. And it says, when Kitesail Larcenist enters the battlefield, for each player, choose up to 1 other target artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as it remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents become treasure artifacts with sack this artifact and they become treasure. Yeah, so new good pirates, good thing. Cool.
Yeah. So like, oh, it says up to as well. I didn't realize that part. Yeah, it's quite silly. Like at some point, this is literally just like 3 mana, nuke 3 things on the board. Like it's a Grasp of Fate on a creature, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
with evasion,
it's really all there is to it. It can also hit commanders,
which is pretty hot.
Yeah. I mean, it makes them sack them, but like,
darn,
I don't know. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. This is 3 removal spells stapled onto a 2-power evasive body.
That also has ward, which is, as we know, ward is annoying.
And has 2 relevant creature types, as we talked about, being human and pirate.
Is a good card. More pirates.
Yar.
Next card on our list is Scytheclaw Raptor.
It's not a Jurassic Park card. This is an Ixalan card.
Okay. It's a 4/3 that costs 2 generic and a red.
What does it do?
It says whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, it deals 4 damage to them.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Okay.
It's a pretty cool card. I don't know.
Yeah, this card's really hot. I like this.
Yeah, no, I think it's just genuinely like if any sort of aggressively slanted red decks are like starting to come out of the format, and it doesn't even need to be like a strict burn style deck at this point, right? Like this one is just a very restrictive piece, and like that 4 damage adds up, right? Like if anyone's been playing against Talion lately and locked under a Bloodchief Ascension, you know how quickly that stuff starts to count. So suddenly every counterspell fight is just like, well, I had 12 life more at the start of this, so that's cool. Right. And like in some ways, this might be the loosest statement I make here, but like in some ways it is like a Grand Abolisher at a certain point, right?
Because I mean, people got to look at their life totals, right? Like,
yeah, right. Depending on your life totals. And also like 3 mana 4/3 body on top of all that also helps to add to the pressure on the life totals for sure. So I love what they're doing with red in this set. I think it is like the best thing to happen to red in a really long time, and I'm very, very happy about it because I'm a red player at heart for sure.
Really, Ian? I did not know this. This is new information. Yeah, I like this card a lot. I'm really into it. Yeah, next card on the list. Tishana's Tidebender is a 3/2 Merfolk Wizard that costs 2 generic and a blue. It has flash and says, whenever it enters the battlefield, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebender remains on the battlefield. So, this is a card that a lot of people went, ew, poo poo pee pee. And you did not.
You can't expect me to follow that up.
Are you kidding me? You give me some of that shit too. Come on now.
Yeah, so I think the Tidebinder is actually really solid. I think there has been like a lot of what I would call like loose comparisons to existing effects, right? So like some people were saying it's Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle doesn't stop Dockside. Pithing Needle does not stop Thassa's Oracle. Some people were saying that it's like a Torpor Orb, but Torpor Orbs don't normally have flash, with the exception of Hushring Gryph, and are not one-sided. This card is really solid. It's hard to interact with because of the fact that it's a creature. I think if your strategy revolves around the ability flash, then this card is actually pretty good. I don't even think that necessarily needs to be the case, but I think like blue decks should look at this card very seriously. I think it's very powerful. That's really all I have to say about it in any sort of long capacity.
Here's what I want to tell people, right?
Yeah.
Is think about, okay, so what 2 of the boogeymen of the format right now are Tivit and Kitten, right? Yep. What do they both have that this doesn't even need to target the Kitten? Like, so a really good example of this, right, is one of the things that's really tough about Tivit is it has ward. What is it? 3? Ward 3? This doesn't care about that. It's just like, hey, I'm gonna counter that Tivit trigger, and oh no, now your Tivit is it's a big 6/6. That's it.
You know what it also counters that I literally have not heard a single person talk about? Tymna.
Yeah.
It literally comes down, shuts down the Tymna trigger, and says that Tymna has no more text until this thing dies.
Yep.
I feel like it is mind-boggling to me, these comparisons that people are making, because it does not compare to anything else that exists in the format.
Yep.
Like there's literally nothing that exists like this.
Yeah, it is not like people are looking at the counters, the activated ability part, and only that. And that is not the relevant piece. Like it's part of that. But the real thing here is that you're countering, like, think about the other boogeyman, right? Of like Winota. Winota goes to attacks, trigger, cool. In response to Shauna's Tidebender.
Yep.
Oh no. Now it's gone.
Yeah. A useless piece of text for right? Like that is until Tidebender goes away. But like that's I just feel like this card is just not being talked about, and it's driving me crazy.
I mean, it even shuts down like Bowmasters, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna try and Bowmasters my thing. What if I counter that and now it just is a 1/1?
Yep, just 1/1.
Like it does so much. I think the ability that it strips the all abilities of the card, I think people are vastly undervaluing. And it also does this to like artifacts too, and planeswalkers. So if there's like somebody has an Oko out, they're gonna elk something. Hey, guess what? Now that Oko does Noko. I really tried on that one.
Yeah, no, that was good. I like that.
Now it's Broco. That one worked. That one's better. Now your Oko is Broco. But like it's one of those things where I understand if you're evaluating it simply on the activated and triggered ability side of it. I agree on all of those points. However, it's not just that. If it was only a counters trigger abilities thing, totally on the same page, this card wouldn't be very good. But when it strips a card of its abilities, that is when I go, okay, this is a lot better than I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, for how long have people been trying to get humility to work in this goddamn format? Right? There's a reason. Very strong.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say. Like it's
I just feel like the evaluation of this card has been like so off. It's crazy.
Yeah. This is a good card, people. It is not, format altering, but it certainly is a good new blue card and worth your attention. Next card on our list is Hulking Raptor. It is a 2 generic and 2 green 5/3 dinosaur with Ward 2. And it says at the beginning.
All right, I had to get one more done. I knew I put you in a false sense of security with the last one. So it says Ward 2, and at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you can add 2 green. It's, I don't know, 4 mana to have a consistent mana battery on a 5 power creature every turn is like,
it's pretty solid.
I don't know. Like they were like, hey, let's take Hedron Archive, color, specify it, and make it a 5/3.
Yeah. Hey, mono green players, check it out.
This is the most like stompy green card of all time, right? Like it's like that in the 3 mana 5/4 elf. You know what I'm talking about from standard. Yeah, like this is the stompiest of all stompy green cards, and I think it's just, I mean, genuinely, it's like a solidly statted card, and the fact that it gives you 2 mana every turn is like bad at all.
Yeah, really, really hot. Another hot 4-drop. Speaking of Hedron Archive,
give me them hot drops.
Card that looks a lot like Hedron Archive is Roaming Throne. It is a 4/4 golem that costs 4 generic mana, has Ward 2. Really, really laying on the ward this set. As Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So, like, obviously, Magda card MVP, right? Like, yes?
Yeah, this card's crazy in Magda. This card's crazy in Magda. It's very good in Winota. It's really good with, I don't know, dinosaurs of some capacity.
Is this an Agila card?
Huh. I don't think you want a doubler for Najeela at 4 mana.
But what if you did? Hey, it's time for your favorite game show.
Make me laugh so hard I sneeze.
No, I mean, this is like, if you're playing a creature-centric deck, like, I think this is super solid. Like, I think you could make an argument to play this in Malcolm decks and stuff like that. Like, anything that is reliant on a specific creature type, I think it's worth exploring. I don't know that it, like you said, I don't know that it goes in Agila, but perhaps, like, I could look at this and make an argument that maybe it is worthy of being in, like, that 4-drop slot, because of the fact that it's just like, it speeds you up considerably.
Yeah. No, I think this card is quite powerful in the right shells, right? I think it's really good for lower color decks. So, like, Itali, I love this card, right? That's Panharmonicon with upside. Like, it's there's so many shells that, like, it just adds a little bit of funk to, and that's okay. Like, we need a card like this. It's really good at benefiting you for sticking to a game plan, and that's what this deck is doing, right? So I love that. I genuinely,
absolutely. Next card. I'm keeping all of that in. Next card on the list is Bonehoard Dracosaur. It is a 5/5 dinosaur dragon that costs 3 generic and 2 red. It has flying and first strike, and says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play them this turn. If you exiled a land card this way, create a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, create a treasure token. So I don't know if this is a cEDH card. It feels like it's a Prosper card at minimum, right? Like,
it just does so much.
Yeah,
like,
it does a lot of stuff.
It's like, okay, so all right, it's free. It's a 2 free cards every turn. You're like, okay, sure, yeah, it's really good. And it's like, also, here's some treasures to help you cast them. And if you get screwed and you hit land drops, like, just have some 3/1s. Like, what?
It's just like, here are some 3/1s, and here's a treasure. You're going to make an assortment of either, no matter what.
Yeah,
which
like,
is dumb.
Yeah, like, so at 5 mana, it's really hard to know whether this is a cEDH card, but it is one of the most push cards I've ever seen, as far as, like,
I mean, the card is pre-selling for like $18, because I'm sure a lot of other formats are looking at this and going,
yeah. No, I literally, like, opened one up in the packs, and I was just like, oh, the text is still going. Okay.
Oh, it's not done
like, yeah, literally.
Next card on our list is Illustrious Wanderglyph. It is a 2/2 golem that costs 4 generic and a white. It has Ascend and says other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token. This is just color shifted Deeproot, or what's it called?
Hey, you. Yeah, you at home. How would you like your Tendershoot Dryad to feed Dockside? Well, have I got a card for you? It's called
Hey, everybody, do you want a new card to feed Dockside, but also does it kind of like Tendershoot Dryads? Well, guess what? Do I have the card for you?
Yeah, that's like a pretty good Justin Worley, I'm not gonna lie.
They should have called me to play Morty, because I actually feel like I do a decent Morty.
Yeah, for sure. This is also, funny enough, not, but also is a Winota card. Like, it's not, but it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a Winota card, kind of.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you should play this card in Winota, but like, I could see it being very good in Winota.
Yeah. Would you say it's unacceptable?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Listen, I had to make the lemon head.
Yeah.
I'm drinking lemonade. Like, come on.
You have a head.
Yeah, obviously. So let's move over to the artifacts. First artifact we are going to be talking about is Dino DNA. It costs 1 generic to cast. It has imprint, 1 generic, and you tap it and exile target creature card from a graveyard. I'm watching you.
For what?
Activate only as a sorcery. Then it has this other activated ability that costs 6 generic to activate. I hate this.
What does it do?
I hate this so much. I don't want to live in fear anymore. Says create a token that's a copy of a target creature card exiled with Dino DNA, except it's a 6/6 green dinosaur creature with trample. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay, we're safe.
Cool.
Yeah, this is a Jurassic Park card. You're gonna wait until I chill out and then do it, and I know it, and it's just gonna keep me on edge this entire episode, and I hate it. So this card is interesting. I don't like it, but you seem to like it.
I think this card is just fun. I don't know. It might not be good enough, but I think it's a silly little guy. Like, I really like. So there are definitely once.
How do you like it?
So good. Once every 3 months, I definitely see like a person who will be like, "Yeah, Zerd is playable as a deck," and like that is one of the places I think is most interesting for me. I don't love the sorcery speed restrictions on all the abilities, but I do find it funny that you can play this for 1. You can get it off Nurse's Saga. You can exile your opponent's. You can exile your opponent's Docksides out of their graveyard and go infinite with Dino Docksides. If Dockside equals 6 mana, you can make infinite dinosaurs. If Dockside makes 7 mana, you can make infinite mana and infinite dinosaurs.
Yeah. This card kind of reminds me of Dermotaxi a little bit, but like better.
But it doesn't make infinite dinosaurs.
Correct.
It's also like a weird, like it sort of got like that Soul Cauldron thing where it's like not a reanimate, but it isn't not a reanimate. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this card is really cool and fun. And I would like to believe that in a grindy enough game, if you're playing Dockside or your opponents are playing Dockside, or like actually it's kind of funny in like those Dimir Scepter decks we were talking about too, right? Because like if you like, especially if you're like milling your opponents, the idea that you can like steal their Dockside and then go infinite with their Dino Dockside.
The activate as a sorcery fucking sucks. I wish it was the second.
Yeah, if that piece of text wasn't on there, I would be like actually really excited.
It really, honestly, like that is the part about it that I look at and I go, cool, I can't play this because I just can't. Yeah. I can't use it to snipe things from my opponent's graveyards. I agree. That just like, man, that's a boner killer. Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can see you holding your laugh back.
I don't want to encourage this.
I don't want to encourage this. Make sex jokes literally every episode. Next card on our list is Tyrian Soulcleaver. It costs 1 generic. It is a legendary artifact equipment, and it says equipped creature has vigilance, and whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. And the equip cost is equip 2. This is a really cool card. Not a whole ton to say about this. This is definitely a big upgrade for Arden decks. And very specifically is an upgrade for Arden Tana and Arden Crom. And the reason being, Arden Crom, obviously, this is a dockside outlet, so you have a way to just make Crom kill somebody very quickly. And then in Ardentana, it snowballs immeasurably fast. You have Tana creating tokens, and you have this that just kind of feeds that, and so it creates a snowball very quickly. Very good card in those two decks specifically. It really made me excited to kind of want to put Arden back together, honestly, because it was just like, oh, hey, cool, a new thing.
Yeah, it's also very good with Ojutai if people are ever still on that deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it just like it's one of those cards where I'm like, hey, it doesn't do like it's not super sexy. But it does like if you play it, hey, this is a dockside outlet. It does a lot of stuff to help win the game. If you're honestly, a deck that I think would be really cool with this is like Ketis Ojutai, or not Ojutai, Ketis Ishai, because it adds to that. You have like a dockside outlet so that you can use Ishai as a way to just win the game. Like, I think it's really cool. But also, like you said, the Ojutai deck, like this breathes a lot of life into that deck. So very excited. I like this card. I'll probably be playing Arden more in the coming months. I just it's not a I don't want to play Tivit. It's just a I miss my baby. I miss playing artifact. I miss playing equipment. And next card on the list is Tyrion's Journal. It is a colorless and a black legendary artifact, and it has two abilities. The first ability is you tap, sacrifice another artifact or creature, draw a card, and only activate it as a sorcery. And then second one is too generic. You tap it and discard your hand, and you transform Tyrion's Journal. The backside of it is the Tomb of Aklazatz. It is a legendary cave land, and it says, obviously you can make black with it. So it taps for black, and you can also tap it, and you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. If you do, it enters the battlefield with a finality counter on it, and it's a vampire in addition to its other types. And for those who don't know, if a creature with a finality counter on it would die, exile it instead. So it's a really interesting way of like fixing that typing issue that they had with like Sarah Paragon, if you remember, where Sarah Paragon did a very similar thing to this, but it just added an effect to the card instead of like putting a trackable way of following the game state. This is a good way to like fix that. I like this change. But yeah, so this card's super exciting. What are your thoughts on it?
So like Bad Zack Outlet is decent, right? Like just does draw cards, and like that could be a lot worse.
Right.
The obviously the ability to just be like repeatable, straight up just cast out of graveyard is nice. Obviously discarding your hand is like a huge downside, right? But I can easily see scenarios where like you have like drawn some cards, things are just not going your way with your hands, or you're playing a strategy that doesn't really care about like cards in hand. And just being able to like flip that over and just start recurring creatures out of the yard, I think is pretty solid. I don't really know what the home is, but I can see
this feels like another Prosper card, honestly.
Oh yeah, because all the cards are in exile.
You don't care if you have cards in hand or not.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I can get around that.
You can bring back Docksides. You can bring back things from your graveyard. Like I think this is a pretty solid piece for that. So
I also kind of like it in like Oscar, because you can just pay 2 and just discard your whole hand, and like you don't even care about the backside. You're just like, okay, cool. I'm gonna flash in my entire like board of threats.
Yeah, it's a very versatile card. Next card, Altar of the Wretched. It's a 2 generic and a black artifact that says when Altar enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards, where X is that creature's power. Then it says it has craft with 1 or more creatures, 2 black, And remember how craft works. So there's you gotta craft this with one or more creatures, and then I believe if I want to look at the reminder texts just so I have like the full craft ruling.
Yeah, so you pay
they
the
don't have all
cost
the rulings out. Yeah.
Yeah. They can be in the graveyard or on the field.
Yeah. So there is that, and then it has a third ability that says it's a activated ability, costs 2 generic and a black. Return Altar of the Wretched from your graveyard to your hand. The backside of this card is Wretched Bone Mass. It is XX. Wretched Bone Mass's power and toughness are each equal to the total power of the exiled cards used to craft it. And then it also says Wretched Bone Mass has flying as long as an exiled card used to craft it has flying, and the same is true for so on and so forth. It's kind of like that card from Cons of Tarkir. What card am I thinking of?
Yes. Yeah, so the bone mass part of it is like some cute upside for sure. But the front part is where you like actually get the use of this card, which is just like it's another Dargo enabler, right? So like ETBs, you sack a Dargo, you draw 7 and then mill 7. Mill 7 could be upside, could be downside, but like in the Mardu and Jund and red black Dargos, this is just like easy money. It really is just like, okay, hey, I'm gonna draw my 7 cards now. Like it's another Obnix list, another X, Y, or Z effect in that archetype where you're just like, I'm drawing a bunch of cards off having Dargo, right? So that's really all there is to it. It's a good Dargo enabler for sure.
Next card on our list is Brass's Tunnel Grinder. It costs 2 generic and a red legendary artifact, and it says when it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a boar counter on Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Then if there are 3 or more boar counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. And the backside has the ability, it can tap for red. It's let's see, it is Tekotuklin, the Searing Rift. It can tap for red and says whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by this land, discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. This is super cool. Like, holy hell.
Yeah.
I know you were posting about this on Twitter about how you're just like, how is this not like, how are people not losing their minds over
it? It's a permanent. That's a wheel. Like, you can play it. You can sacrifice it to Goblin Welder. You can bring it back with the Goblin Welder. You can play it in Duretti. You can play it in Niv Mizzet, which was already playing Valakut Awakening. And like these are all conversations about the front side of this card. I don't even talk about the back side that is just like turns into a land that allows you to just get free value off all of your spells, right? Like this, I am obsessed with this card. I think it is so good. Like you can just play it in any sort of deck that flickers things, right? Like Boros has like been going through a flicker theme recently, and like that is a very solid way to use this card. Pardon me. And like once again, like red artifacts are meant to be played, sacrifice, brought back, played, sacrifice, brought back. You can bin it with Goblin Engineer. It's a one-sided wheel that you can bin with Goblin Engineer.
Right.
Like
and get back with Goblin Engineer.
Yeah. Like between this and Decaying Time Loop, like they are really making a lot of one-sided red wheels, which is kind of crazy. I think this card is really, really good. And once again, the fact that it's a permanent, I think that is like the biggest part about this card is like it is just like it adds to your Mox Opal count. Yes, it adds to your opponent's dockside counts, but hey, guess what? You're probably trying to sack this thing anyways. Like it is, I'm obsessed with this card. Like it literally, you can wheel with this on one side and then sack it to Dargo. Like just little stuff like that is like
on the Doctor Who set review, how it was like with the King Time Loop, where I was like, there's no reason to play Wheel of Misfortune anymore. There is even less reason to play it now because this is the same cost and it nets you potentially more cards. So like, just come on, guys, stop playing the bad wheel. Play good cards.
And like the thing is, right, like it does, unlike like Wheel of Fortune or something, right, that it has like a restriction of like how many you like draw, right? Decaying Time Loop will draw you less cards every time. This one does draw you that many +1, right? which is very big. But it also like doesn't draw you a fixed amount like 7, right? So like it is important that you do have at least some cards in your hand when you're going through the process. It's worth
Yeah. I am very much a fan of this card, but hey guys, play better wheels.
Yeah.
Play good wheels with upside.
Yeah.
Next card on the list is how do I say this? Chemiel, the Inner Sun. It is a legendary artifact that costs 6 generic to cast, and it says spells you control can't be countered. At the beginning of your end step, discover 5. If you're unfamiliar what discover is, which we talked about a little bit on that last card, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana value 5 or less. Cast it without paying its mana cost, or put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So it gives...
It is crazy to me how powerful Discover is.
Right? I was just about to say that, because I didn't realize until this moment how absolutely bonkers Discover is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives you the option of, hey, do you want to cast this or not? No, you want to put this in your hand? Cool. Like, it just doesn't care about Draneth. It's like, hey, here's a card, put it in your hand. Oh, you hit a counter spell, put it in your hand. Like,
yeah. Also, it's better than Cascade because it can be the same mana value.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's so good. This, however, this card is... So I saw people trying to compare this to, what is it? What's the 2 mana thing that spells cost 3 more? The artifact that everybody plays.
What?
The artifact that people play is like a Grand Abolisher because it makes whenever you're not a
Defense Grid.
Say that again.
Defense
Grid? I saw people comparing this to Defense Grid. In Defense Grid, this is not.
This is a completely different card.
Yeah. Like it's not even remotely close.
If you want to only play Defense Grid style effects, you do not play this card.
Yeah.
That is not what this card is for.
This card is a Duretti fucking like slam dunk.
Arkham Dagston. Yeah, exactly. Like all of that junk, right? Like all of the big artifact style decks are playing this, right? Like, I mean, just Discover 5 is huge, right? Like it genuinely,
it's insane.
It's a lot of value over and over.
Yeah.
Right. So, I don't know if there's like Mishra's Workshop decks that are like going to be starting to come out. I know like Heliod's already kind of there, but like that's what this feels like.
Listen, I'm always down to play a Workshop deck. I love me a good Mishra's Workshop. And this card, like the thing that's wild about this is because like you remember my Golos prison deck. This fits into that sort of style deck very well because it takes it. It doesn't take the place of Godpharaoh's statue, but it's like a quicker you tutor for it quicker because of the fact that like, hey, it protects your spells and then also is just like, hey, every end step you're gonna get bigger. Oh, this also just doesn't care about like Lavinias or Boromirs or any of that stuff. So like this is really hot.
Yeah. I think this card's sick.
I'm really into it. Maybe I should start looking into building 5-color prison again. I missed that deck. That deck was so much fun. Let's move on down the line. Let's look at the enchantment section. There's only one. It's a Deeproot Pilgrimage. It costs a generic and a blue and says whenever one or more non-token merfolk you control become tapped, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token with hexproof. So we were talking about this pre-show. This, and there's like some other merfolk in the set too that are pretty good. But like this in particular made you and I go, is Kumena like worth building now? So what are your thoughts on this card?
This makes me wonder if Kumena is worth building now. No, yeah, it's solid. I think it is. If you are playing any sort of Merfolk strategy, specifically Kumena, right? Because that is literally just about green, blue, tap Merfolk, right? So every time you tap 3 Merfolk, you're also making 3 bodies. Is huge, right? So like if you have Kumena and 3 other Merfolk, right? And this on the field, just doesn't matter what the Merfolk are. Just like Kumena and 2 other Merfolk, right? So you need 3 total because Kumena can use itself for that ability. Which is the ability it's specifically referring to is tap 3 and tap Merfolk. You control, draw a card, right? So Kumena, 2 Merfolk, tap them all with this card. You draw a card, you make 3 bodies, which will then allow you to tap them all and draw a card. So worst case scenario, that's the kind of nonsense you're doing with that deck. You also can just like use Kumena's ability because they're like Azami, right? Does not care about summoning sickness. You can just start like tapping them at end step to the Merfolk that are coming in are just like getting you more bodies, right? And then also there's lines with like intruder alarm and stuff like that. If you have one of the Merfolk intruder alarm and this card from Ixalan, you are just making a ridiculous amount of bodies and going crazy.
It is very exciting, and I'm very excited to brew this. And you and I are going to be brewing this in this might be, depending on how that goes, this might be a episode. So yeah. Next card on our list, let's look at these instants. Let's look at Get Lost. Get Lost. Can you say it like a Bostonian for me?
I don't think in any way that you have not just done. I think that's more of a New York thing.
Get Lost. Can you not say it Bostonian?
Well, I'm saying like you can, but it's not like a Boston thing, right? Like it's not.
What would be a Boston thing then? Like, what is the Boston equivalent?
I don't know. There'd be a lot more fucks in there.
Like, Get Lost is a instant that costs a generic and a white, and it says destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. We haven't talked about map tokens yet on this podcast, but they are artifacts they are pretty okay. They have the ability, 1 generic, you tap and sacrifice this artifact, target creature you control explores, activate only as a sword. Like I said, they are fine. Nothing to write to home about, but
they're a great limited mechanic at most.
Yeah.
Like, why did those have to be limited to sorceries? They're already bad. Are you kidding me?
This is a thing that Wizards does that really drives me nuts, is when they put the activate only as a sorcery on an already mid mechanic, where you're just like, you just did not need to do that.
Yeah, like, okay, cool. So you really wanted to only be playable there.
Cool. But this card is playable in our format. That's a good card.
Yeah, because you give the maps to your opponents. They suck. No, I mean, it's just so flexible. Destroy creature, enchantment, like, okay. Oh, no, you have a dockside. Kill it. Oh, no, Ristic Study. Kill it. Like, get out of here. No more breach. Done. Like, so strong.
Yeah, it's very good. Very exciting to see good white removal. I think the way Jeremy put it was, this is the disenchant killer.
Yeah.
Like, no more disenchants. Next card on our list is Permission Denied. It is a white blue instant that says counter target non-creature spell. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. All right, let's talk about this. Because people have some interesting thoughts on this card.
I think this is the most overrated card in the entire set.
Tell me more.
I just, like, okay. First of all, we don't play Dovin's Veto in most of our decks nowadays, even though that is counter target non-creature, no more questions asked, you're done. Right. This can still be countered. You can throw a Dispel at this, and I don't care what other line of text it has after a counterspell resolves, it doesn't do shit. The only scenarios in which I like it, only scenarios are, my opponent goes, I lead with a silence. You go, great, I'm going to counter that. You're not going to get the backup either. Only time I actually care about this card. Everything else, no, don't want it. Don't need it.
But you can counter your Lotus Petal with it. Because that's what we want to be doing.
You've heard people say that?
I have seen multiple people say that. And I've been like, that is a decision you can make.
The counterplay I can see also to this card, right, is I present the silence.
Mm-hmm.
My opponents go, okay, I'm going to counter your silence. And you go, no, I'm going to counter my silence and silence you.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more in the middle. I don't think it's as bad as you do. I don't. Here's my issue is I look at this and I go, what am I playing this over? Right. And because when I look at my counterspell suite, I'm a control deck, right? I can't think of a single card that I would cut for this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately where I land on it is I'm just like, I don't know what I would cut for it. I like it, but it's like, I don't like it enough to play it over Mana Drain. I don't like it enough to play it over Delay, right? Like I have to hold it up against the other 2 mana counterspells that I have. And I just, I don't look at this as a card that is better than those. And so like there is some really interesting counterplay with this, but guess what? We also have Ranger Captain. We already have a lot of things that do those for you and do it better and with that are less convoluted and easier to protect.
Yes.
So
absolutely. Gonna say better myself.
Get lost.
Get lost.
Next card is Zayoa's Justice. It is a Justice. I am Justice. It is a colorless and a red instant, and it says the owner of target artifact or creature with mana value 1 or greater shuffles it into their library. Then that player discovers X, where X is its mana value. So this is pretty all right removal in red. Yeah. I don't love the discover part, but
yeah,
you know,
like hits One Rings, which is pretty sick. It hits any indestructible permanents, which is also pretty nice. Well, indestructible artifacts and creatures. I think it's nice for the early game when you're trying to disrupt people's combos and things like that, right? Like there are definitely situations where this is going to come up, and it's really nice to have that flexible removal. There are probably also going to be times where like it's better just having a braid,
right?
But this is one of the most like, as far as when I target a thing, it will go away.
Right.
You know, as far as that's concerned, this is effective.
I think my only like concern with this is that I think it's a little bit too much of a what's the 3 mana shuffle it into your library card that I can't think of?
Chaos Warp.
What?
Chaos Warp.
It's a little too Chaos Warpy for me. Now it does like make you cast cards, and it also like can put them into your hand. So there's like an ability to deal with things, right, that they get off of it. But I don't love Chaos Warp effects in general. So like
you don't play enough low color red decks.
Yeah, well, correct. I play low color blue decks. So I don't have to worry about it. I just play good cards.
Sometimes they're a necessary evil, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I can absolutely see this in like low color red decks being reasonable. Next card on our list is Echoing Deeps. Thought it said depths, but it's Echoing Deeps, which just feels wrong. It grammatically speaking feels very wrong.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Sure.
You may have Echoing Deeps. It just sounds wrong. It enters the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land card in a graveyard, except it is a cave in addition to its other types, and it also can tap for colorless. There's 2 things with this. First of all, for people who like Legacy, hey, your Loam deck just got a massive upgrade because guess what? Your Dark Depths deck doesn't really need, it's like the easiest thing in the world to turn on now. So enjoy that. Also, like the fact that it can be in a graveyard, I think is substantially more like interesting than I think a lot of people are really looking at. Oh, does your opponent have a, like what are the lands in your opponent's graveyards? Do they have a Gaia's Cradle? Hey, I'd like this to be a Gaia's Cradle, right? Like, I think this is, obviously this doesn't go to every deck. I think this kind of goes back to my, hey, I want to build a loam deck, or I want to build like a lands deck in cEDH that isn't like Tatiova. And this really kind of lends to that strategy really well. We talked about a little bit pre-show of like, you could almost build a sort of build your own primetime deck with this, where you can bin cards with it. And it what's the 2 colorless and a green card where it's effectively, or it's not 2 colorless and a green, it's 3 colorless and a green. It's basically Gifts Ungiven, but for lands. Do you know what card? Realms Uncharted.
Yes.
Like, very easy to set up with Realms Uncharted. So it's one of those cards that I'm like, it's not immediately obvious how this works in cEDH and the benefits you get of it.
Right.
However, I think
coming in tap is definitely a big downside too.
So. But I do think there's a lot of stuff, like, I think like if you wanted to build a loam deck, again, it's looking like loam is just getting a lot of fucking like tools. So you can build loam decks pretty easily. This also feels like a card where I would be like, hey, I feel like I would want to play this in something like Gitrog almost, right? Like,
sure.
It feels very much like, hey, my Lake of the Depths is in the graveyard. Hey, what if I copied it? So there's just, there's a lot of things where I see this as being a very, has a lot of utility that might not be in the mainstream cEDH consciousness, but definitely is one of those cards that I'm like, hey, you should pay attention to this.
Yeah, I'm about it.
Looking over to the next card on our list, we have Contest of Claws. It is a 2-mana card. It costs a generic and a green sorcery. And it says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. If excess damage was dealt this way, discover X, where X is that excess damage. That's fucking nuts. What the heck? So you requested this card. So what did you have in mind specifically with it?
Okay, so here's a really niche scenario. I have a big creature and you don't. And I cast Contest of Claws with my big creature and it does excess damage, and then I discover a bunch. That's really it. It's just, it's crazy. I think there's like, worst case scenario, it's sorcery removal, which is like not instant speed, but it's not bad. Best case scenario, it's like a cantripping sorcery speed removal spell, which is pretty sick.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. I don't have a whole lot to add other than that's fucking nuts. But hey, green decks, good for you. Green decks seem to have gotten a lot of really good, cool new cards this set.
Yeah, especially done.
Yeah. Next card on the list, Molten Collapse. It is a black and red sorcery. It says choose one. If you descended this turn, you may choose both. And you descended if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere. And the 2 abilities are destroy target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So yeah, this is pretty solid, flexible Rakdos removal. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like, destroy a creature, destroy a mana crypt is like fine, but
I personally,
I will not be leaving this up anytime soon.
Yeah, I personally like, I forget what it's called, but the Minotaur Planeswalker, I forget his name. But the card, the card from War of the Spark, where it's each opponent sacrifices one, like, and you choose which they sacrifice. I think I like that more than this. But like, I think this is still a solid addition, black red. So yeah. Next card on the list, we're almost done. Squirming Emergence. It costs a colorless, a black, and a green. And it says return to the battlefield target non-land permanent card in your graveyard with mana value less than or equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So this is sort of like a what's it? Savine's Wreck almost?
Green Black Sabine's Wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that comparison. I
don't think it's a great one.
Love that comparison because Sabine's Reclamation having flashback is huge. Like
100%.
very huge. And this one not doing that is okay. Now there are going to be times when you like pull a 4-drop, pull a 5-drop, pull a 6-drop out of your graveyard for 3 mana, right? And those are pretty sick. This is a very particular like Sultai, Golgari, Jund. Like I'm working with heavily with the graveyard kind of card. I can see some breach lines with it, but like you need to basically be like, okay, yeah, I'll get breach and discard and growth, and it's like okay, right. Like it's not exactly scratching that itch for me, but I at least get where it's coming from,
Yeah, there's some people that are really high on it. I think it's fine. I think it's a good additional card to have in your pool. I like that it like scales a little bit. I also think that does kind of bring it down a little bit, but overall I think it's fine. Also the fact that it only hits non-land permanents I don't love. But you take what you can get. Last card on our list is Savage Order. It is 2 colorless and 2 green sorcery, and it says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature with power 4 or greater. And then it says, search your library for a dinosaur creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It gains indestructible until your next turn. Hey, look, we have another natural order.
Yeah. I think this is really funny with Apex Altasaur specifically. Because that is just a guaranteed one-sided board wipe. No matter how much power and toughness is on the board, that is just boom, 10 power, repeatedly fighting your opponent's creatures, and it gets indestructible. Is that what I see happening in every game of cEDH ever? No. But like, there's really cool cards that exist right now, like 7 mana Atali, and the new Ghalta that we just talked about. Those are cards I would not mind shooting onto the battlefield.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid card. And yeah, I mean that's really all I have to say to it. If you like natural order and you like dinosaurs, you'll like this. That's the take. So all in all, we went through all 33 cards and we managed to do that in less than 2 hours, which is honestly pretty. Look at us. Round of applause. Thoughts overall on this set, Ian?
This set once again it is like pushing that B tier envelope, right? Like I don't think there's a lot of like, oh my god, I broke the format cards. I think there's a lot of good players. I think there's a lot of cards that are really nice to have in the 99 of a lot of good decks. I think the format is better for this set because there's a lot of interesting pieces that are spread out. I think there are different strategies that got a little bit of a boost. Do I love that Najeela got another Grand Abolisher? Not particularly. Do I love that other decks got a new Grand Abolisher? Yes.
The unfortunate part about that is when other decks do get a Grand Abolisher, Najeela does also get that Grand Abolisher.
Yeah. But like, I love that Roaming Throne helps a bunch of C, B tier strategies. I love Dauntless Dismantler helping the non-dockside decks of the format. I love that Scytheclaw Raptor is a burn spell existing on a 3-mana body. I love Brass's Tunnel Grinder. There's just so many cards in this set that are
get
just
lost.
Like, oh, yeah, I know you like it lost. But there's just like a lot of stuff in this set that like changes the way game mechanics work. It changes the way dynamics in the game work, and I like that. Like it's a good thing.
Yeah, very much. I definitely agree with that. And like one of the things that I like the most about this set is that it breathed a lot of life into like strategies. I was like, we're like strategies that were like almost there. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of strategies we've talked about over the years where we're like, it's not quite there. It's going to get, once it gets to a certain point, it's going to be viable. But at the moment, it's not. Kumena is one of those decks, right? Like, we've talked about Oswald on the show a lot, where like Oswald's one of those decks where it's like a matter of time before it gets broken. And what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where I like sets like these because it doesn't just make the best decks better. It makes the good decks better. And that's what I like to see, where we see good decks get visibly improved in like meaningful ways.
I completely agree.
So with that being said, it was a pretty good set. So Ian, people will you will have already been at Atlanta by the time this episode comes out.
Yes.
But what do you have on the schedule coming up?
Atlanta's the big one coming up. Then Mox Masters is kicking off again, independent of Eminence Gaming, which is kind of an interesting development. I know that they all were basically like, "Hey, thanks for showing us the ropes. We're gonna go separate." Well, glad the playing power is spreading their wings and flying. And there's a lot of Eminence stuff coming up too. There's a lot of big tournaments coming up in the scene. Surprisingly more than I thought were going to happen in December, which is awesome because I was going to be really sad if there was just like this whole Christmas break from CEDH. So I'm glad that the holidays is not like completely removing the wins from people's sales. Also, if you haven't heard, there's obviously a giant debacle with Monarch events, so those are a little not going forward. So it's a good time to maybe support fellow content creators who were negatively affected financially due to the
kind of does feel that way, right? Like
but help out your fellow content creators, or if you want to get stuff out of it, you should sign up for CEDH coaching, which you can do through
cannot say without underscoring it enough. Also support your judges out there. We put in a lot of work, and there are judges out there who put in much more work that deserve the money that they are getting paid and do not deserve to be strung along for a month. So support your judges, pay your judges. Don't be shitty to them. Don't be shitty to people. That's how I feel about all of that. But please go and if you would support the show, you can do that on over at patreon.com/Mind Sculptors. I think we mentioned this last week, but starting next year, we're going to be doing some patron bonuses where you're going to be able to vote on what we do for Brewer's Choice, which was a thing we did in the past. We're bringing it back, and we're going to be doing Brewer's Choice every month going forward. So we're going to be bringing you new decks to look at every month. So keep an eye out for that. Other things to keep in mind is if you want access to our Discord. I know we don't talk a lot in there right at the moment, but that is a good place to come and find us if you do want to talk to us, because you can absolutely have a conversation with us and some of our other wonderful patrons, and Phoenix and Cobblepot and all those people are in there.
You may converse with us. We have given you permission.
To talk. So how do you want to end this episode? How do you think we should end this one? I gotta say, after talking about 33 cards,
this has been the Mind Sculptors. I am your co-host, Ian.
I'm Callahan. We'll see you next time.